What's the quickest way I'm going to get my information in front of this person that I want them to see?
I literally landed a job because I put that on there.
The diversity and the difference in this industry is what makes it so unique.
So you're better off being 100% who you are.
Whenever we've looked at like hiring juniors in the past,
What are your thoughts on people using AI?
go in with what you would like and you think's fair.
It's a very, very small industry. Everybody knows everybody in some way. So thank you for joining me today, Charlotte. I'm so excited you are here. I'm so glad we get to chat. Before we get started, I'm sure lots of people know who you are, especially folk in the games industry, but would you do a little introduction about yourself and your pet?
Yeah, of course. My name's Charlotte Pook. I'm a talent acquisition manager at Electric Square. This is Dahlia, named after the Black Dahlia murders. I mean, it's Goth Boss, right? It works.
It was.
Sinister. Yeah, and I have a lot of hats actually for a talent acquisition manager. Not all kind of fit the same mold. I'd say I do obviously the traditional recruitment style of stuff that people would expect. Whether that's headhunting, looking at applications, doing events like Develop, chatting to students. But also I kind of work quite closely with the core service team as well. So quite close with IT and HR and all those nice things for DEI and B as well. Really enjoy getting stuck into sort of seeing how we can be better as a studio. That's pretty much me and my role.
Your role is so important in helping people find work, and you've got such valuable insights. So I'm hoping what we chat about today will be really helpful to people, because games industry is a bit of a mess, but so are the broader creative industries, and even outside of that, it's brutal out there right now. So hopefully people will find this helpful. So the audience for the podcast is a mix of people from people looking for full-time employment and just work in creative industries, but also people like myself who are like contractors or consultants. So I guess we'll start with people looking for work first, and then we'll move on to like business owners and what they can do and how they can attract diverse applicants.
Yeah.
For anybody looking for a job, I'm going to guess LinkedIn is where a lot of people should be, but is that actually true? And are there other platforms that matter these days?
I would say, yeah, pretty predominantly that's your front runner at the moment still within the games industry. I mean, there are like sort of breakout groups, there's people on, Discord, communities. I don't personally. We do have a Studio X account. That's what we call these days. I'm old school. I'm like Twitter, Blue Sky. Obviously, there's communities on there now as well. But I would say predominantly LinkedIn is still like your front runner if you are wanting to like make sure that you're going to be seen, headhunted, get your information out in a really easily quick readable format as well.
That's really interesting. I only recently started reusing Blue Sky, and I'd stopped for ages, but it's actually really nice. There's loads of really good people on there. It seems to have picked up a bit.
Definitely. I think it's not harmful to have more accounts if there are people, you're spotting sort of game dev folk on there and studios. If you're spotting them popping up on places, it's not going to hurt. It just might not be your most active platform. So I'd say if you enjoy one, 100%, use both, but LinkedIn's probably going to be where a lot of recruiters are using like licenses that show if you're open to work and stuff. They're going to pick that up because of the nature of the tool. But yeah, there are other opportunities. There's also like sort of specific job boards to discipline. I've in the past historically, like when we found VFX quite a tricky one, there's like VFX specific sort of forums and like websites and stuff, which is quite interesting. So sometimes you find like communities there, and even Facebook groups. I found people on Facebook groups in the past, but yeah, a little bit when we've been really stuck, I've kind of looked along those sort of more unorthodox methods.
That's really interesting. Like, I would never have guessed Facebook. And I'm intrigued to know what it's like on X these, because I literally don't look. Like, I shut down my account, so I've no idea. Like, are people still actively using it in the games industry?
I do think so. I think not as much as they were, but I think they are. Yeah. I think I might have to just for like business purposes to see, but like whenever tech changes, I'm the least tech person. It's the like most like ironic thing, but yeah, I think people are still on there.
Nice. Okay, that's really interesting. I think, yeah, it all feels like it's changing, right? It used to be back in the day, everyone would be on one place.
Yeah.
And now people are just spread about all over, and there's so many different communities to join. So I guess given LinkedIn's probably the main one, and then it's various social media if you want to use them, how important is a personal portfolio these days, like your own website or an art station or something like that?
Yeah, really, really important. I would say like the first thing, like what I always tell people, especially students that are trying to break in, but it's really useful for everyone to be sort of in that mindset, including myself if I found myself, ever, although I don't think so. I think I'm going to come out of ES in a coffin if I'm honest. But the things that I say are, always think of us recruiters, and we're okay with it, as the laziest people in the world, right? Think when you're looking at your information, think, okay, what's the quickest way I'm going to get my information in front of this person that I want them to see? And like, especially with artists, with sort of portfolios, I would say just make sure you've got your links right at the top of your thing. Your CV, whatever format you've sent me something in, I want to see a clickable link to your portfolio, because sometimes it literally is, we want to see that first, then we'll read on. It can be that brutal. If we've had that many applications, we're literally mining to find your portfolio to see the quality, because it will tell us straight off the bat what who we're working with, what level in your career you're at. The biggest faux pas is putting those website links and ArtStation links and stuff at the very bottom of your CV or your information, because if we're having to go through, let's say, 500 applications, we are just trying to mine really quickly for that bit of information that tells us what level, what style, how proficient you are with certain tools. So yes, those portfolio links are important. I would say, I mean, there are probably some really technical. I know there's some really technical recruiters out there because I'm friends with them. But GitHub is an interesting one. We see quite a lot, obviously, in the engineering field. I wouldn't say I know exactly what I'm looking at as a recruiter, but I know it's something I can pass on to directors. It's an additional bit of information. If you were sending a LinkedIn profile link to me and you had a portfolio link as well, that's preferable to just a LinkedIn, because they're not going to be able to understand the depth of your experience. So yeah, very important.
That's really good to know. The tip to put the links at the top
Yeah,
is
really
so helpful, because often it's like the order of what you put things in on a portfolio is really
important.
tricky. And I've been helping a few people with like various bits of coaching at the minute, and quite often people almost don't want to shout out about their achievements, or they will bury the names of like the big IPs or the big studios. It's like, no, put them to the top, shout about the biggest, most recognizable things.
100%. And it's funny, isn't it? Because like people do get quite humble in the games industry, I think, but we do really, appreciate those big wins at the top of your portfolio and your information, because it automatically tells us kind of at what point you are in your career as well. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, we may be looking for a junior, in which case that's not kind of something I'd be actively looking for. But if I'm looking for someone who's going to at least be around sort of the senior lead level, we are going to expect certain bits of information to be included. And, ideally some published titles would be in there at that stage in your career. Yeah, pretty much your advice is spot on.
Always good to know. So obviously there's been lots of people been made redundant lately, and it's so tricky. And I've seen, well, there's numerous people I know who've been looking for a job for 6 months, 9 months, getting on for a year. Like, it's really brutal. How do like recruiters, hiring managers feel about career gaps? Because obviously there's a lot of people who are having those at the minute that can't really help them.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, it's probably better to go find a job maybe in like an adjacent industry to fill the gap if you're struggling, and then you can always come back to games or creative industries later. What would your advice on that be?
100% support that statement, and it's exactly what I've been saying to people. I had a few people ask me that actually at Develop, interestingly, and students as well. Like, would it look bad if I was going to an indie, or I formed an indie with some friends before getting into the industry? It's like, no, because you're still actively sort of pursuing something you're interested in. It doesn't matter if it takes the traditional form. I think at the moment, there's going to be a lot of leniency on it at the moment. Like, I think traditionally people would have been a bit like, what were you doing during that period of time? But we're seeing such a strange time in the games industry. I think if anyone's, there's a gap in between, 2024 and 20. I hope very soon it's going to change, but, and now at least no one's going to judge anyone for like having either it being a career break, reassessing what they want to do, whether it's they move into tech adjacent roles like you mentioned, whether they join indie for a bit and they've traditionally wanted or have been working in AAA or AA. There's not going to be, I personally think if a recruiter stopped and didn't assess that, then that wouldn't be a sensible thing. So I certainly will be looking at people with career gaps, whenever. In fact, like, it's never really been something that I've stopped on. I might have asked the question previously, but it's certainly not going to be something that if I see some really amazing work in a portfolio or an amazing application and someone's had a career break, I'm certainly not going to be like stopping that process. I'm going to be just saying, hey, is this due to, or I might ask the question like, did you have a break because of redundancy? And usually they just go, yeah. I won't necessarily even pry. I'll just be like, so during this time, do you want to share maybe what you've been doing? I won't push, but I think most people kind of say up front in an interview now. I don't need to normally have to. They just go, hey, I was made redundant from, and it goes straight into what it was.
Yeah, I feel like it's become such a common thing that
super.
Almost sort of not as embarrassed to talk about it or say about it now if you're struggling to find a bit of work, because it's just so standard.
The green banner's a thing. Like, no one's going to judge you for it, and I think if anyone did, they would be insane. So, green banner. Don't be shy of putting it on either. It shows us you're looking for work. I think there's like a stigma with that now as well. I'm like, no, it makes it easier for us recruiters to see that you are. There's no shame in it. Like, it's just a rubbish time. Like, there's a lot of people in the same boat.
Yeah, honestly, that green banner, I hear some people say they don't want to put it on, and I literally landed a job because I put that on there, and then people reached out to me rather than me having to like constantly be chasing. So 100%. It really does help.
I think so, and I think some like I try and be quite mindful and like read through people's information before I reach out if I'm like headhunting, just because some people have in their information written I'm not looking for work and would rather not be contacted. So it really does help people like me know that you're quite happy to be contacted. So yeah. You put them green banners on if you want
to. And so I guess if you put your green banner on your LinkedIn, what's the tips for making your profile stand out, right? Because some people's LinkedIn has barely anything on it, and other people, they're like constantly posting. Like, what as a recruiter would you be looking for? Like, what's going to help people stand out if they are applying for jobs?
Yeah, of course. It's a really hard one, isn't it? Because it's like almost like a personal preference thing. But for me, there's certain things that I'd be expecting to see. I'd like to see, first and foremost, the content of what you've been doing. So if it's just a title, I'm not going to understand what you did in that title. What were your roles? What were your games that you worked on? How long were you there? Like, I'm going to need to know a bit more than just, let's say, character artist and dates. What style, what was it you were working on? You don't have to break NDA. You can totally say like, some of the tasks that you did without doing any of that. But it's just to understand the tools you were using, the type of style you work in, the type of game it was. So we know, if we're specifically looking for someone who's got experience with a racing title, for example, including your genres in there, because then we'll know, you're probably proficient with a project that's got that. So definitely include some bulk to your title, titles or job descriptions, as such. And projects, as you say, if you've worked on a published title, you can talk about, you can even write unannounced, whatever title, AAA, AA, indie, and then maybe the type of game if you're allowed to put genre. It helps us understand a little bit more about kind of what you've been doing, what you maybe prefer to do as well. Like, we don't want to be tapping you up and being like, hey, do this, and it's not your jam, because as we know, like, there's about, I think 10 there's more than 10, but at least 10 different types of tech artist. So we, if we know what it is that you enjoy within your discipline, it's easier for us to kind of approach you about the right role. Another one would be a short bio. Doesn't have to be huge. Mine's not. It's probably not the best one out there, so don't use mine as a poster child. That's for sure. But short bio about who you are, what you want, what you've been doing, and if you have been in the industry a while, you can put that. Or if you're new to the industry, you can kind of put seeking a role, so we kind of know exactly off the bat who it is that we're working with, what they're looking for. And if you don't want to be approached, you can put that in there as well. That helps. Helps us, pestering you if you don't want to be. The photo one's a tricky one, right? Because, I like a good photo, but it's a personal preference. And I appreciate some people really don't like having their photos on their portfolio, or they worry that they're going to have like a stigma attached to it. Especially like sort of if you're from like a underrepresented group, it might worry you. I really hope that it doesn't. It makes me sad that that's still a thing, but I do understand why people don't, and I do understand, and I understand you can sometimes it's like obviously in the settings, but sometimes if you don't connect with someone, you can't see it at all as well. So it's like blank profile until you connect with someone. But you can turn that off so that people can see your at least photo and bar without being connected. I didn't know that for years, and I was like trying to approach people, and I must have looked really like anonymous. Like I was like, ooh. As a recruiter, that's not a good thing. But that's a personal choice. It's really hard, isn't it? What I would say is if you're gonna, don't make it a group holiday photo. I would hope most people have realised looking at other LinkedIn profiles, that's not the done thing. You can normally get a flavour of what's a nice LinkedIn profile photo. But yeah, I have seen some interesting sort of like holiday snaps. It's like, holiday snaps are great if they're a nice headshot in a nice place, but if it's like 5 people, I'm like, who am I speaking with? And I quite like a nice sort of the cover. I don't know what you would call it, like a cover bar. And whether if it's for an independent, their name and some nice art, or just something there rather than the stock LinkedIn. I think that's just me personally, because I'm a bit of a creative, so I like looking at pretty things.
Yeah, I feel like most people in the creative industry want to see a bit of personality, a bit of difference,
Yeah, a bit of
right?
flavour.
Because that says a lot about who you are, and I think that's why
Yeah.
like me and you have clicked, because it's like, oh, the
Yeah.
goth, like we've got that down. But it means that you're going to relate to somebody, right? And especially in a creative studio or just an indie or a small
Yeah.
place, even if you're just looking for a freelancer, you got to get that vibe right, because the vibe is so important when you're bringing
Yeah.
someone in.
And I think people worry that I mean, obviously, I'm quite an eccentric, extroverted kind of person, but I think people worry that they need to be that, and I'm like, not at all. That flavor can be, just unique to you. It can be that you enjoy, like a certain. I've met a lot of typography people in the past that actually like that really sort of simplistic, stylized, slick, sleek, sort of graphics. That can be your jam. It doesn't. You don't have to be sort of. I mean, there's kind of that common denominator. I feel like in our industry, with a lot of people are are normally quite heavily tatted or look a bit alternative. There is quite a lot of us. I don't know how we've all snuck in, but you don't have. You know what I mean? There's no set demographic in the industry, and I think think too much and you might overthink it and worry. Just be you. Think about what appeals to you, what you like the look of. Because the diversity and the difference in this industry is what makes it so unique, and what makes games better, and what makes everything about the games industry better. We like difference. If we all were tattooed and had blue hair, it would be very sort of one size fits all, and that's not what we don't want. We don't want to return to that.
No, you're right. I think, we want the diversity, and we want people to be authentic, right? We want to
Yeah.
see the real personality. Don't just try and be like everybody else because you think you should be. I said it on a previous episode, but social media just wants us all to assimilate and all look
Yeah.
the same and all be the same. And putting on that sort of almost a mask is exhausting, and you're not going to be fulfilled doing what you're doing. So you're better off being 100% who you are.
Yeah.
You mentioned a bit ago about how there's loads of sort of students coming out of uni and thinking, oh, maybe they should be indie devs, start their own studios.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Have you seen lots of people going that route recently that you've spoken to?
Yeah, I've seen quite a lot of people like collaborating to keep that like creative spark flowing while they're looking for work. It's definitely the like sort of mumbles and grumbles of like the sort of the indie revolution, which I really like. I'm like, it sounds like an uprising. I'm like, yes. We've even seen people step out of sort of AAA, AA to go and do something exciting in the indie space. And there is something about it that always like excites me. I'm like, oh, it's like a secret club. Yeah, lots of buzz around that, especially in the student sort of stratosphere, I guess. But in general as well, I'm hearing like a lot of people who work for regular studios that obviously allow that sort of side development. There's a lot of sort of indie projects being made at the moment, or like people getting excited about making their own projects as well. It's good stuff. There's some good stuff happening.
I think it's a really good idea for the students as well, because if they can't find work in games initially,
Yeah,
or they just want to try something else, it gives them something to put on the portfolio, right? And then they
definitely.
can soon come back to it
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah, it shows a professional way of working because if they've learned it and they're wanting to like sort of use all the skills that they've learned, whether that be in uni or they're, home taught, I think, and games jams are a great thing as well. We're seeing people do more games jams, just to get that experience. It's all going to be like positive stuff. Like whenever we've looked at like hiring juniors in the past, games jams and evidence of working in a professional way, even in sort of like very, very small startup indie projects that they've devised themselves, it all helps because it shows how they'd work for us. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I also think as well, if you've worked with an indie or a startup, it doesn't matter if that's games or a different creative industry, you learn so much more often than you will in a larger studio just because you have to do so many different roles and do lots of different
Yeah.
things. And I feel like it just gives you a much broader experience. Like my first job in games was at Mind Candy on Moshi Monsters. And I think I was like 15 in the little studio. Like it was
That's
so
so cool.
small, but I had to do like so many different roles, even though I was like specifically a game
Yeah.
developer. I did many things and I learned so much. So you have to hit the ground running, but it's
Yeah.
such a good thing to do.
Lots of
So
hats to wear.
yeah, I definitely recommend like startups and indies for anybody starting out. So
Sure.
I guess for those people who are looking, another tricky area, and this is whether it's full-time or freelance, is quite often people don't, as in companies, don't say how much a salary is or what their
Mm,
budget is for a role. And then when you're going in for it, if you're looking for full-time work, you don't quite know where to start. And
yeah.
often on a day rate, as a freelancer, it can be really, really tricky because you don't want to price out the clients who are nice, but also you need to earn what's fair. So do you have any tips for people like, who are going out looking for jobs on how to question the salary or
Yeah.
even negotiate a bit better salary?
Yeah, it is a really, really tricky one because in the UK we're still very like closed doors on that. I think there are going to be some bits that come in that are going to change that. Don't quote me, I'm not HR. But I think there are going to be potentially some sort of bits that are going to come in that make that a little bit easier in the future. Um, but as as for now, I would say, when I have people ask, it's quite good if someone's given me a sort of banding. Bandings are always good because it's kind of not, you're not promising yourself to a point. If you're worried about, let's say you want to ask for, I don't know, let's say it's £200 a day, but you're worried that the company might only have like 125 or like 130. Obviously, this is quite low, but like, you are giving them the option to say you've not kind of said I want 300 quid. You're saying, well, but there, and you can always say there's room for negotiation.
Hmm.
um just say this is what it has been previously or this is what I had in mind, however I am very open to negotiation, and then that company understand, if they haven't got the budget that that person's looking for, then they can come back and go, well, this is what we've got. um Obviously we appreciate if you can't take that because it's lower than what you've got. It is a little bit at the mercy of a good company having a good moral compass. I would like to say we do. If someone's selling themselves too low, we obviously want people, especially, we always kind of look at who we've got in the team, what's fair with skill set levels, and looking at that person that might be joining the team and making sure that they're sort of aligned on that. But there will be people, no doubt, that are exploiting, someone's vulnerability of not knowing what to ask for out there, sadly. But yeah, I would always say go in with what you would like and you think's fair. Speaking to other devs that you know personally and are comfortable asking the question of what they're earning. And it's a bit unorthodox. Not usually if you're at the same company, it's not advised. But if you have got freelancer friends that are freelancing, I don't think there's any harm to say, oh, this is what I usually ask for, because they're an independent themselves. They are an independent business. Um, Usually that can help gauge if they're on, they've got a lot more experience than you and they're asking for X amount. You can probably think about where you feel's fair to sit within your experience. Um, it's really hard because there's not like an all singing all dancing spreadsheet of figures that tells you where and what you can be asking for. So it really needs to be, can you live on that amount? Is that the amount you're needing? Is this something you've heard from a friend that's a fair ask? And could you give maybe bandings? Are you happy to ask the studio to say what they had in mind first? It's a really unique sort of individual case by case, depending on who they're asking as well. Like obviously a AAA glittery studio is probably going to have a little bit more cash than a small indie studio startup. That's another thing. It's not a sort of one size fits all ask. And I think there's actually recruitment agencies out there like acknowledging that now. They're saying, this is our fee for a place that have X amount of staff working for them, and this is our fee for a indie startup, and tailoring their package to that. So I think it is something that you're seeing kind of across the board, even, when asking for a job or supporting someone with jobs. Yeah. I know that's not very helpful, guys. I'm really sorry.
No, that is really helpful because honestly, what you've just said is exactly what I've always done when I've been freelance.
Yeah.
So I first started out doing freelance game dev. That'd be 2013. I first did it, so ages ago now. And at the time, I asked friends who did a similar role.
Yeah.
And then I basically just took the average of what they said, and that was my starting rate. And then the best advice I ever got from being freelance was for each new client, whether it's like you've done a 3-month contract, a 6-month one, add like 25, 50 quid to your day rate and try it. And then if they say no, you just go back. But it means that as your career and your experience progresses, you're always just trying a little bit higher, and you might get someone push you back. And if so, that's okay. You try again next time. And then, the different banding for different studios totally makes sense because, AAA have got vastly more money. People like agencies, they're on such a tighter budget, so they might struggle, but they also want people short notice. So you can kind of negotiate a bit. But indies just don't have much money at all. So sometimes it's good to do mates rates for if you really love an indie project and you can afford it, charge less to work on that and get something in your portfolio.
Yeah. I'm glad I wasn't too far. It's a really hard one for me because because we don't advertise, bandings. It's something we've discussed, but it as a company, as an industry, I feel like it's kind of always been a little bit like that. But it is something we do discuss actively, and we want to be as sort of up to date with all of those things as everyone else. So it's not stagnant. It's not a stagnant question.
Yeah, I think there are so many companies that just don't advertise it, but if you know your rough ballpark, and there's loads of places you can go to find, if you don't have any idea what your salary should be, places like Glassdoor often give an idea of salaries across different studios, right? So you can go and say, oh, this is my role, this is my seniority, look at all the different studios and kind of take an average as well. And that can often work.
I think Glassdoor is a pretty cool platform. I think I'm not quite there's a question I was going to use Glassdoor for. We do red flag questions, so I'm not going to jump the gun on that. But Glassdoor is an interesting platform in 2 ways. But
Well, let's go for it because let's talk red flags because I know I was going to ask you about like if you're looking for a job and you're trying to suss out, do I want to work with this company again, whether it's full time, whether it's freelance, whether it's contract. So many companies will try and sell you the earth. They've got these amazing benefits, or they've got this culture and these principles and work-life balance, whatever it is they claim. How do you know what's true and if you're actually a good culture fit? And then, what are the red flags you would look out for?
Sure. I think, it's really fair to be asking these questions at interview stage. So rather than you finding out like once you're in and it's too late or you're like disappointed, I think it's really fair to ask the questions that mean the most and are the most important to you at the early stages, even at the point where people speak to me, which is like the initial call. Most of the time you'll have an initial call with a recruiter if you are sort of new to the industry, and then sort of as you go through the process you'll speak to directors. But I think feel free to ask those questions, and if they seem to be difficult and they're important to you, then that might give you an indication that it is something that they're not maybe as comfortable or haven't explored. It might give you an avenue to, like, let's say it's diversity and inclusion. I like to use that one because it can be a sort of a mixed park on, whether a company's doing something on it or is proactive in it or cares about it, which everyone should, in my opinion, but there we go. But, I think, you can be asking those questions, like, what is it you do for that? What is it that I'm going to get with that? Let's say, for example, you've got a wellness benefit. Is that wellness benefit limited to gym use? Is that wellness benefit is that diverse and inclusive? Like for example, ours isn't fixed to gym use, because you see so many like that, but not everyone can use a gym. Not everyone wants to use a gym. It's not everyone's outlet. It's not everyone's able to. So, asking those questions is quite relative, because people should know what those perks and benefits are they're including. So firstly, always ask if you're wanting to know more about a perk and benefit. If it's like things to do with things like diversity and inclusion, ask those questions. Like if they're a company that are claiming to do things that you care about, they're saying they're no crunch, they're saying, they care about D&I, what are those things they're doing? Feel free to ask, and they should be able to answer them. And if the person you're speaking to can't, they should be able to refer you to the person that does know. Because for example, if someone asked me an IT question, I wouldn't have a clue. I'm not going to lie, but I'd refer them to the right person. But if someone asked, someone else in the business about D&I, they could refer them to me. Or education, what do we do for schools? And people, partnerships. Are we partnered with anyone who do that good work? For example, into games and stuff like that. So people should be able to answer those questions. If they're stating they do it, they shouldn't feel uncomfortable about answering them. And if they do, then that might be a flag, but you certainly should feel like you can ask. In respect of, unknown flags, as you said, like you're sort of if you don't get it directly answered for you as a flag, ways to find out if there are flags you should be sort of aware of. Like you did mention Glassdoor. It's a funny one because it is probably the most obvious place to find stuff out. I would always suggest, and ours is pretty good, but I would always suggest to look how many times the concern has been raised. You're always going to get, when it comes to reviews on anything, whether it's a burger shop or a game studio, that's a really bad comparison. I don't know, they're both pretty nice. You're always going to get people that either don't like something or are miffed about something, and generally they're the people that love to make the review, right? But what I would say is, if you're seeing a lot of people making the same comment over and over again, I'm saying like sort of 5, 6, 7 plus people all saying, let's say for example someone had a crunch culture problem at their studio, and you see like 10 comments on any sort of referral or a review profile. If there's 10 comments all saying the same thing, it's probably a problem. If there's 1 or 2 that seem a little bit out of place, there's probably been a very case by case specific situation, right? We get we all get. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I might have upset. I don't know, but it can be just a one-off thing. But if that same person says, "Well, Charlotte's a nightmare" 10 times, I'm probably a nightmare. That's my best analogy for that situation. But I hope that Glassdoor doesn't say that.
We'll have a look after.
Log in, quickly delete. And the lovely thing about that one is you can't delete it. The studio can't. So There you go. If they have said it about me, it's been there 10 times, then I can't, after this lovely recording, go and delete it all for you.
No, you are not a nightmare. It's all good. I'm sure no one has said that.
But yes, I would say if you're regularly seeing something, it's probably a flag. And if you've noticed it before your interview, ask them and see see what they say to it. They may have acknowledged there's a problem there, and it's something they're already addressing and putting to bed. In which case, that's a good thing that they're admitting or seeing it and have acknowledged it, and they're doing that. If they're like, oh, that's news to me and it's everywhere, then it's probably they don't maybe want to discuss that. So. But yeah, a lot of the time, if there's a problem, you'll know about it in this industry, I think.
That's true. That's true. It's a very, very small industry. Everybody knows everybody in some way.
Yeah.
It's like a single degree of separation for most of us. So,
yeah. And if it's a big concern, it's usually like public. It's like on a publicity, like whether it's on sort of Games Biz, or you'll see it in the press somewhere if it's a really bad one.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll have all heard of it at some point. I think that's a good tip on finding sort of multiple pieces of evidence for something before you know it's a red flag. I think that's really, really helpful. So I had one last question on sort of the side of people looking for work, or like tips for them. What are your thoughts on people using AI in their applications, whether it's for their CV, for their LinkedIn bios, or whether it's for a cover letter, if people still write those, because I can understand needing help to pull something together, but you want to see effort, right? You want to see someone really caring about the job. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And as a recruiter, is that just automatically a red flag, or do you give them the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, I guess it is so hard, isn't it? Because it's really case by case. It's a really divisive subject in general right now. As a recruiter, I think it's got its place personally. Um, I don't know what the repercussions are to say, oh yeah, if you're concerned about the repercussions, don't do it. Your natural flow will be just fine on a CV, and I'm not going to know either way. Well, I might, because the language will be all floral and it sound like ChatGPT, but that, you know, I'm not going to grade someone down because I think that they have used it, because it could be for all sorts of reasons. It could be because they're dyslexic and they find it a useful tool. It's, you know, I use certain AI tools for my grammar. My grammar's really poor, and for suggestions on like rewording what I've written, because as you can tell from this interview, I can go around the houses, and sometimes I just need to thin it out, especially with like a CV or a cover letter or a bio, and you're looking at it and it's super wordy, and you want to thin it out so it's an more easy readable, you know, piece of text. I like AI for that sort of thing. So if you're saying, okay, I've got a CV, it's currently 2 pages, can you make it 1? Just see what it thinks that you should remove out of it, or, you know, slim down, or can it make it easier to read? See what it suggests. Don't always take it as the gospel. Like, you can make your own decisions, but it can help you look at stuff in a different way. It's like almost having a team that look at it and say, you could try this, without having a team, especially if you're an individual. That's how I like it, especially with sort of applications. But don't feel like you need to reword it because it said something, but it may give you another idea. I don't think it's a bad resource. The cover letter is still a thing we see sometimes. I wouldn't say we necessarily always get the luxury of time to read all of the cover letters when we do have them. A lot of application sites now, I think, including ours, allow you to do sort of like a cover comment or a comment box. It's a nice place to put what you would have in a cover letter sometimes. I think even LinkedIn does on Quick Apply, gives you that option to do a comment. Treat it like a traditional cover letter would have been. Gives us a bit of a flavour of a person if they haven't had the opportunity to put all of that on their CV. Again, another opportunity to show you as an individual. It's really hard because until you know a person, I'm not going to know that's how they would write a CV or not write a CV. So, you know, AI is pretty smart in the sense that it's quite hard to decipher sometimes, especially if you don't know that person. If they knew, oh, Charlotte doesn't write as nicely as this, and this is all written real nice all of a sudden, they're going to probably know, right? But when it's an application, I'll just see it as it is, you know, as an application. But if it helps you to thin it down, you know, you might be struggling with the wording of a bio. Can you help me write a bio? These are the things I want to include. I don't think there should be stigma attached to it in that sense. The only thing I cannot comment on is the environmentals, because I don't understand the ins and outs of it. Hence why I don't use it as much, because I'm concerned. But that's my 2 cents on it. Not any, you know, I don't frown upon it because I just don't know enough. Or enough about what it's doing with what you're asking. So be careful if you're including anything that may potentially be confidential with a client, because you don't know where it's going. You need to keep it real vague if you are going to use it as a tool, especially in the games industry.
Yeah, that's a really, really good bit of advice, actually. Like, I think sometimes people use it to look things up or like feed something in, and just, I mean, don't put NDA stuff in your CV, cover letter, portfolio anyway, but certainly you're right, don't ask ChatGPT or tell it things, because you've got no idea where that's going. And yeah, it's not safe. Yeah, it's a good tip on doing sort of bios and things like that, because I know so many of us have imposter syndrome or self-doubt, and we're not the best at championing what we're good at. So asking it to summarize you, it will definitely hype you up. Like, it will give you a really good way of shouting about yourself, which I think many people could do with. So I think that's a good tip.
Perfect example. I've genuinely used it for that, because I'm like, oh, weird. Like in the past, I was asked to write something in sort of like the third person, I guess it is. But I was just like, oh my God, I can't describe myself like nah. And then I was like, can you write a really nice sort of statement about me? This is what I do. It did a lovely job. It must have known me real well. But there have been times where I've had to do it. And it can be brilliant for things like bios because you're like, make me sound really good. I've got all these, all these things. I completely agree because it can be so weird writing about yourself.
Yeah, it's not easy to
No,
yeah,
I've done it.
it's
I can admit to this one.
I feel like I have to do it all the time for events. I'm like, oh God, I hate it.
Yeah,
I feel too
can you
ego.
give us a bio about all the things you've done? And you're like, ChatGPT, help me out there.
Write this thing for
Help
me.
me. The other thing I would say is it's really hard because like use of sort of AI tools on, for example, those job searching, the job seeking sort of folk on LinkedIn at the moment using it. It's another room divider. We see people, including very, very close friends of mine, using it as maybe the image to get a post out on LinkedIn to get, we all know if you put an image with some text, it's going to get better algorithms than nothing or a share. I am seeing obviously the use of AI for those images, they sort of just are open to work ones or in general, I see them on adverts. I'm like, geez, I hope you didn't pay an agency for that. That's ChatGPT right there. And there are certain pieces of artwork I think you can tell that are AI. I think just be mindful that if it becomes a trend or you're seeing the same style of art, you are putting yourself amongst those that are quite happy to use sort of AI art. And that for me it's a really hard one because I get, there's times where I'm like, yeah, that's okay. And there's times when I think I'm concerned about where it's stealing its artwork from. So I'm sat right in the middle there, but I'm also really aware, like in instances, such as people that aren't artists, like, I'm a mediocre one at best, but, there are times where I'd probably prefer, an AI piece of software to make me something because I can't afford to contract an artist, but I need to put something that's eye-catching out. But it is a really tricky one. Like I have to sit somewhere in the middle on it because I don't know enough. I know it steals and I know it's eye-catching and it's tough.
Yeah, it's such a tricky one. And you're right, it's such a divisive topic. And I can see good uses for
Yeah.
using those tools because it will empower people. But then I think, yeah, the way it's trained is not ethical. And like just scraping everybody's art and written work off the internet, it's like, I feel like the genie's out the bottle as well. So it's not going to get closed away. Like AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's such a tricky one. But yeah, I think you're right on the images in that, yeah, if people don't know how to make an image or they struggle, then it can help. But then you've got the issue of they all just look the same, right? And then how do you stand out? If all your writing has that same feel that ChatGPT has or all the other LLMs, or your images look the same, you're going to struggle to stand out. So again, you're better off just being authentic. Like stick a photo of you up and talk about what it is you're doing. Like
that's what I've literally said before. I'm like, show something as a hobby or like show a picture of you. People love to see pictures of other people doing things as well. It doesn't have to be, do you know what I mean? It can be you playing a video game. It can be you showing your favorite video game, or like it can be nothing to do with it. It can be like, hey, here's a nice day out. But even just a beautiful like sunset, that you've taken a photo of and you've just said something that you're wanting to get out there, but it's eye-catching and it grips someone. If you're worried about using AI and you're not keen, those sorts of things are just as like, I think they get just as many hits as the AI ones, if I'm honest.
Yeah, or probably more because it's something completely new, right? And it's unique to you.
Agreed, 100%.
So I feel like that's tons of advice for the people that are looking for jobs. And I know we've not got much time left, but I'd love to talk more about on the business side, like helping people who are maybe have a small studio, or even if they are sort of a larger AAA. Let's talk about the recruitment process and how they can attract diverse clients. Because I think whether or not you're looking for a full-time employee or someone just to help you out for a little bit, it can be really hard to attract diverse applicants. I've seen that myself when sort of I've been roles where I'm trying to hire and I'm thinking, I just want to see more diversity, and you can shout about the role as much as you like, but it's really hard to get people in. what can people do to make sure that those people applying are as diverse as possible and that they're making the job sound welcoming and
Yeah.
inclusive?
No, 100%. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I've like over the years looked at different things in different ways. The biggest one for me is to make sure, and obviously I'm working with a team, but if in a small business, just make sure your description is 110% the definites that you need. Keep it as streamlined as possible, but those description points of what you would be expected to do and what experience you're expected to have, make sure they're as to the point as possible, and they're not nice to haves, they are definites. Sometimes it is tempting to put nice to haves in, and I don't, hands up, I do sometimes still do that, but I try and stress it is 100% nice to have. If you've got this is also nice. However, these are the definites that we need, and even then I would always stress that people still try and apply. So I generally put a line in my job descriptions that say, if you have some of these, but not all, or some variation of that, please do still get in touch. If you're not meeting all the criteria, please do shout if you've got most of it or close to it. I think that that's a really good way of sort of, when you're putting your job specs out, is, welcoming applications that might not tick every box, but also trying to limit how many boxes they've got to tick. It's statistically, proven that diverse candidates will avoid a role if they don't tick every box. And another really nice thing, you can use platforms now. I'm quite mindful of them because I like to just check that out myself, and it is something I'm very interested in learning more about, actually. On a sort of a deeper point, is language types. Obviously you hear of like masculine language, feminine language, neutral language. Now, there are platforms you can put like your text through that will give you an idea of if it is a masculine piece of text or a feminine sounding piece of text, or would appeal to a feminine audience. I don't know how strictly true that is. It's something I personally want to look into. However, I always err on the side of making sure if I am putting something out, I will try and keep it as neutral as possible. But if you are looking to attract more diverse, then maybe you would want to weight it sort of more neutral femme in language style. But there are some words that I'm like, oh, well, I align with that. Like ninja. I'm like, well, I'm not a ninja in my actual life, but I'd like to be that much of a powerhouse that I could do that thing. But that's where I want to look more about kind of where the bones of it all come from. But I do try and keep the language as neutral as possible, just not to scare anyone off. It doesn't need to be sort of very floral or the other way, very hard hitting. Just think about the language you're using in sort of the initial description of what the job is that you're doing. And there, like I said, there are platforms out there that can acknowledge sort of where those styles lie. They're the two big ones, I think. Just kind of be mindful about how you've written something. Does it feel a little bit more welcoming, or does it feel very formal? Do you want it either way? Is the style of the project that you're working on reflective in your description? Like, we've done that before. We've had, historically, there's been quite a sort of a cutesy game, and actually the way we wrote it was very much that way. We had a narrative designer job description, and we wrote it in a way that would appeal to a narrative designer.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So maybe you want to do that, but it is preference again.
Yeah, I love the idea of like really unique job roles and job descriptions out there, and because it will attract the more creative people, right? Like if the vibe of how it's written isn't just completely corpo, especially in the creative industries.
Yeah.
Like put some personality, put some flavor into it, and it'll definitely attract the right people.
I think so. And I think it's always quite human just to say, look, if you don't tick all these boxes, you can literally write it. If you don't tick all these boxes, but you're still really keen on chatting with us, please just still reach out.
Yeah, I think that line is super important. It's funny, I mentioned Mind Candy before, but I got my first job in games by applying for a job that was way above my pay grade. Yeah. I was just like, why not? They only had one job available and I really wanted to work there. Wow. And it was for like a senior game developer, and I was junior as hell. And I'd been teaching myself Flash in my lunch breaks. Amazing. And I was like, I really want to work there. And so I applied for it anyway, and they were like, lol, no. Like, yeah, clearly I'm not gonna. But they actually said, we like your like portfolio and the fact you want to learn, stay in touch because we've got a junior role potentially opening up in 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I stayed in touch, kept learning, and six
Yeah.
months
Perfect.
later, that job opened up. So
Yeah.
I think that is really important for people to remember that you can send in a speculative application.
Big time.
And yeah, you can apply if you don't tick all the boxes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've literally opened speculative on the website so people can still submit and it stays on, on our database and that. We obviously follow sort of rules, but it's on there. People can submit their CV. And then if something comes up, I'll be going searching those titles, making sure that I'm checking all of those. So yeah, it's really important. And it's those people that keep in my head. There are juniors that I've spoken to 3-4 years ago that I want to hire still if we were having the opportunity to be able to do it. And I'd be like, yeah, because they stayed in touch and they listened to what we would want them to like brief up on, and it makes a much bigger difference if you are human, personable. You reach out on multiple platforms as well. Like you might have applied, but you might have sought out the recruiter from the studio you've applied for and say, I just want to let you know I've applied for that role. I'm super excited about it. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. It's going to make me think, oh, okay, there's two opportunities there you've done there to reach out, and someone might not bother doing that. So it puts you that one more sort of step ahead.
Yeah, 100%. It shows you're really keen as well, right? And not just shipping your CV out to everybody, which I know can be tempting at the minute when like everyone's struggling for work. But putting that extra little bit of effort is going to make you stand out against everybody else.
She's fallen asleep. Sorry, that's why I was
Has she
looking.
fallen asleep? That's
I
so
think
cute.
so.
Or she's just bored of the chat. She probably doesn't care about
She's like,
recruitment.
I don't need to submit my CV yet. You're all right.
So I had one last question, and it's kind of a bit broad, but obviously, like people look for different things in jobs, right? And I feel like the world is slowly changing back to more jobs being on site. We're seeing a lot more hybrid,
Yeah.
and then there's still people who want to remote work, and that is much more accessible to many people, especially
Yeah.
people with kids and things
Yeah.
like that. And then I've got friends who really love working in an office because they get more social, they get to leave the house, it's better for
Yeah.
their mental health. So there's such a mix here.
Yeah.
What do you see the trend being like? Because I guess you speak to lots of different recruiters and you've got lots of friends. How are you seeing it going? Are we seeing more of a back to the office or more hybrid?
Yeah, I'm seeing a real mixture right now. I agree. I'm seeing it definitely seeping in more to the return to the office than I did. Obviously, COVID really mixed things up. We were traditionally a studio who were on site before COVID, and then we recognised a lot of the positive qualities that it brought to people, and again, brought to our diversity at a studio level when we were looking at who we had join over COVID and the reasons. Whether it be sort of young carers, young, parents as well, people that had stepped out of different industries because they were able to watch their children grow up and work at the same time. There's a lot of different factors, those who are neurodiverse folk, it was really accessible for different people for whatever reason. And I think it is a positive thing to be able to offer at least hybrid. I do understand why people have fully on site due to security, safeguarding. There are still some concerns there. I do feel like we're living in more of an industry that appreciate, the reasons why we do an NDA and respect that though. As a company, we are very careful. We are very careful with NDA, very careful with security. We have made remote working very, very safe and very secure. But it has massively, massively changed, the diversity, I would say that much. But yeah, it's a funny one. I couldn't say what other people's reasonings are to go back to that because we heard lots of different ones, right? I couldn't pinpoint one particular reason. Obviously, security in the past has been one, a concern, but I don't necessarily think that is why people are at the moment. I think they're wanting to build a culture again of having sort of on site be more of a thing. But yeah, it would be really good to have someone in who has a studio that is completely on site and their reasonings why. I definitely would recommend you maybe finding someone who does to speak on how it feels as well. It was definitely a different feel being in the studio. I was only in the studio 2 weeks before we went into COVID. So I've only known on-site working for 2 weeks out of my
Oh,
5.5 years. And it was different. But what I will say is it gave me back the 2 hours either side of my day that I wouldn't have had before. That's quite valuable to me now. I probably would be looking for sort of a remote job in the future. If anything, happened, I hope not. Touch wood. Feels like that. But yeah, I think that, like you said, it opens a lot of options for people. I like it. If I was not in the industry and someone said, okay, do you want to open a studio? What do you want it to look like? I'd be like, remote working, accessible, for the reasons why we do it. But I completely respect the reasons why people don't, because obviously they have their own reasons.
Yeah, I see it more with the larger, like the big AAA studios. Like Rockstar here has gone back to or is moving towards 5 days back in the office, having everybody been remote, and then 3 days, and then that. And I think it's as they ramp up for release, they're worried about leaks. So you can understand it from that perspective.
Yeah, I completely understand
Whereas
it.
I feel like the smaller studios, startups and indies are more building in public a lot of the time, and they're sharing so much, so there's less risk around leaks because they're sharing stuff anyway, and they're probably more open to it.
100%. And I think that's why I can respect both sides, because I see both sides, right? I get the argument both sides, but I think that I would be sad to see sort of hybrid remote disappear, for sure, for the reasons why we've spoken about, for those diverse folk out there that need that. So I do hope it will remain a nice balance of those that want to be on site, because you see a lot of graduates also enjoying that culture because they like to be able to learn physically sort of on site, sat next to someone. And I think that my advice to most juniors would be, if you can do it, please do, because you'll get a different experience to home working. It's a quicker answer from people if they're sat near you rather than waiting on Teams, or whatever platform. But for me, I'm a bit more kind of hybrid, I guess. I like being able to watch my daughter grow up, but also going to eat all the food in the studio and go to the parties. And I tell them that outright, they know.
That's the perfect compromise, right? Which is what hybrid work is. You get to work at home.
Having my snake and then eat the Friday lunch over at the studio.
Excellent. You've got that sus. That's perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte. I don't want to take much more of your time, but that's been so fascinating, just hearing about all sides of recruitment. Are you happy with me sharing your LinkedIn in the show notes, just in case people want to see how to do a good LinkedIn?
You have to see what a dodgy LinkedIn profile looks like, yeah?
Yeah, don't do this one, yeah. Do as you say, don't do as you do.
Yeah, do as you say, don't do what mine looks like, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the chat. It's been really lovely hanging out with you.
And you. Thanks for having me.